welcome a true hero of election integrity, Justice Michael Gableman.
Promised myself that I would always tell the people the truth about what's going on. I was always, as a history teacher, as Joe mentioned, I was always frustrated that when political leaders or other leaders or anyone would wait until the twilight of their years and then write a book that says, well, that thing that happened 30 years ago, here's what was really going on. And I thought to myself, for God's sake, why don't they tell it to us while it's happening? The good news is that I think everyone in this room pretty much knows what's happening. I had just a little thing happen to me yesterday. I was in a Walgreens and I was walking out, and that's where they sell the newspapers by the door. And I saw our very own George Stanley Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. I'll often glance at the headlines. I won't touch it, but I'll look at the headlines. And I saw, if you remember yesterday, you saw it in the upper right-hand corner, it was something, COVID is, and I stopped reading because I said to myself, whatever they're going to say is going to be a lie that's going to fit into whatever narrative they want to propaganda. Has become of our reporters in this country, where they're no longer interested in truth. They are interested in propagandizing whatever leftist cause that they personally or their editors want to cram down our throats. I want to thank my friend Dan Kelly for putting himself forward to run and expose himself to all of the It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And although Dan and I didn't always agree on every fine point, we agreed on the big issues. And I promise you that whatever the left has in store for us, has in mind for us next April, we need to avoid that at all costs. And I can't tell you, Dan, how grateful I am that you're right. Sarah started out the conversation tonight by reminding us tonight is all about the United States Constitution. And I think what makes the Constitution, this is how I've looked at it since lost. What makes the Constitution unique of its kind, as well as the best there is, as well as the object of almost universal admiration around the world, except for totalitarian regimes in China and Russia and other places. But people who yearn to be free. I'll tell you what, fly into Washington, D.C., fly into New York City, and you get in the back seat of that Uber that picks you up at the airport, and have the driver, who's 9 times out of 10 from a different country, who left everything, left family, left everything to come here. And they always say the same thing to me. They always say the people who were born and raised here do not appreciate what we have in this country. He said, but we, they're thinking of a guy from Haiti, but the examples are all over the place. The way I've always thought about the Constitution since I started reading it seriously can be summed up in one concept, which is what makes it unique. And I think to a large extent, I know we're constantly invited to read and memorize and highlight the whole thing. The heart of it is this, that our rights as human beings, including those who have not yet been born, by the way, our rights do not come from the benevolence of political leaders. Not a king, not a president, not a speaker of the assembly, no dictator. They come directly from Almighty God. That's what the whole document is premised on. That God gave to you and you and all of us, me, all of our rights, and the government that governs us enjoys only a temporary lease
When they do the raffle, then
on the power that we choose to loan to our political leaders. That is what we do. Now, I had a conversation earlier this week with a man who's running for office this November. It's an important office. And let us say he was less than familiar with the contents of my 132-page report. And that disappointed me. So I thought, boy, I've been at this a long time trying to tell people, and I get equal parts, but 49% I find it funny, and 51% makes my blood boil. When the papers bother to mention my report, they always say the Gableman report, comma, which found no fraud in the 2020 election process. There's been a lot of talk about a lot of speculative things, especially concerning machines. I don't know about machines because I haven't been able to break through the barrier of the machine. And so, according to Joe, we've got a guest on the other side of the political aisle here, and I welcome him or her to correct me, as I welcome any member of the press. You'll see these reporters. Not one of them. They all start that same way, like they're almost, of a hive mind, like they're drones pushing an agenda. Not one of them has ever pointed out an untruth in my report. And so I'm here to tell you the truth. In 2019, Mark Zuckerberg decided that he did not want Donald Trump to be president anymore, and that he was going to use whatever part of his vast fortune was necessary to see to it that Trump wasn't reelected. And so he needed to find a professional political advisor to tell him how to do it. And he found a man named David Plouffe, Plouffe. Plouffe was one of the two main longtime political advisors to Barack Obama. And Plouffe wrote the book in 2019 called A Citizen's Guide to Beating Donald Trump. That's who administered the Mark Zuckerberg money and the efforts to come into states like Wisconsin and other swing states. So Zuckerberg sets aside $400 million, and he uses about 10 of it, a little more, a little less, in our state's 5 largest cities. And he comes and he offers them a pro rata portion of the $10 million. They called it a grant, but it was not a grant. A grant is something that is given. I grant you this. It is yours. Do what you will with it. Here's what I hope you'll do. It was an employment contract that he brought to Milwaukee, Madison, Racine, Kenosha, and Green Bay. And for our visitors from Brown County, Green Bay, that mayor there, his little staff, they literally turned over administration of the Green Bay, of the presidential election in the city of Green Bay. They literally turned it over to Mark Zuckerberg's hired hand. A young guy named Michael Spitzer Rubenstein who had secret Wi-Fi. This is all true, and it's all in the report, and the papers never talk about it because they're telling you, don't ask any questions, don't question our agenda, don't question our great beloved leader, Joe Biden, don't question anything about it, rule of law. They installed secret, this is a matter I found, we found it in the contracts, that Spitzer Rubenstein was getting paid with Zuckerberg money, and he's an official at the National Vote at Home Institute, funded by a guy you might have heard of named George Soros. And so Spitzer Rubenstein tells the Hyatt in Green Bay, Chris Teskey, the city clerk, wanted it where it's always been, at City Hall. But she got overruled by the Zuckerberg hired hand who wanted it at the Hyatt. And he puts himself in a suite on the top floor, and he puts it in the contract that there shall be Wi-Fi connections that will be unseen by anyone but him. So he had access to it. And then, in my report, which I have highlighted for my friend who's running for important office, the fact that all the machine manufacturers, both the two big ones, are Dominion and ES&S. And there's another smaller part. But Dominion, ES&S, they were all saying, don't worry, there's no way our machines can be interfered with because they can't be connected to the internet. Lo and behold, we talked with clerks, and it's in my report, that yes, these machines were connected to the internet, and there is a track record of outside actors accessing information before the ballots were counted. Okay? I don't know quite what to make of that, except that the machine manufacturers and their protectors in our assembly, both Republicans and Democrats, they're protecting them. I don't know why. They're protecting them. And no one's allowed to know how they work. Not even the people who are supposed to administer our elections, who actively work to violate the law, which is also in my report, which no one has challenged. The Supreme Court finally said, Gableman's right, those drop boxes are illegal. They shouldn't have been used. But what is Wisconsin Election Commission's? I have to be very mindful of my time. I'm sorry. I think I have. How much do I have?
Give him my 5 minutes.
So what does Meagan Wolfe, the executive director of the Wisconsin Election Commission, the Wisconsin Election Commission, by the way, was created by Robin Voss. Robin Voss oversaw the Wisconsin Election Commission. For the past 3 years, I've been calling Robin a few times a year to tell him about all the illegal activities of the Wisconsin Election Commission, and then he stopped taking my calls. The secret is he brought me in for political advantage. And in public, he's telling everyone he wants a full, comprehensive audit and review of the investigation. But behind closed doors, he's trying to do everything he can to restrict what I can look into and how long I can do it. He wanted it done in 2 months. He wasn't going to pay me. I was supposed to bear all the costs. You know why I took the job? I knew the guy was insincere from the beginning. I knew he wasn't telling the truth from the beginning, and I also knew that if I didn't take the job, nobody else would. So it's a labor of love. I thank God every day that I was able to do it. I never wanted to waste my career just seeking a title and trying to hold on to office. at any cost. I did what I thought was right. So what's the response of WEC, right? They immediately come out and say, we're going to keep using drop boxes until our bosses at WEC tell us not to. Screw you, Wisconsin Supreme Court. We're going to listen. So who had to come in? The Thomas More Society. Raise your hand, please, if you've ever heard of the Thomas More Society. Good. That's beautiful. I have been privileged now to start working with the Thomas More Society. One of the reasons that I took the job is because they are the law firm that is actually forcing the cities to follow the law. So if WEC said, no, we don't care what the state Supreme Court said, we're going to keep using drop boxes, and then who, the 5 cities, surprise, surprise, yeah, us too, we're going to keep doing it too. Thomas More Society started lawsuits against each and every one of them, and so far we've got the commitments in court of Racine and Kenosha. Milwaukee just announced 2 days ago, we're not going to use drop boxes. Because we, Thomas More Society, cannot govern. What a crazy world we live in.
I'm sorry?
When a privately funded organization has to come in.
No, I only got one. Yeah, I only got
Follow the law, when the people who control the purse strings, who pay for weapons. And now what do I hear the proposed response to all of Wisconsin Election Commission illegal activity? If you or I engaged in illegal activity, we'd expect to have a number of things taken from us, including our freedom, our money, our status in the community as a good citizen. What does WEC get proposed? Let's give them over $1 million more a year and over 10 more employees. That'll solve the problem. Only in Madison. Only in Madison or Washington, D.C. with something that absurdly proposed. So Meagan Wolfe, in addition to being the head of WEC, she told the legislature, and I have to give a shout out, as I do, to Janelle Branch. I did not know her before. She has been brave and good and true, and she hasn't been wrong. Okay? That takes some doing. There's too many of our legislators. I either out of fear that something bad is going to come out about them, or fear that they're not going to get money from their political leaders. But I'll tell you what, Janelle Branchen has stood strong, and she said, to hell with you, I'm going to find the truth. So thank you. When they want your vote, they all come and they tell you I'm going to stand strong. I'm going to be for you. I'm going to be on your side. But then they get to Madison. They find out who has the money and who has the information that can be used to blackmail members. We're all human. Yeah. If you look hard enough in any of our lives, you'll find something. They call it. You get the picture. They all say they're going to stay true, but Chairman Janelle Branchen did. And when I came in front of her committees, and I talked for 3.5 hours, one of the things that I pointed out, and none of the papers will ever talk about this, I said, not only is Meagan Wolfe the executive director of our Wisconsin Election Commission, she's also chairman of the board of a private corporation known as the Electronic Resource Information Center. They call it ERIC for short. Another entity that was originally founded by George Soros. An entity that our state pays tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Where once again, like the CTCL contracts with the cities that wound up with Spencer Rubenstein actually administering, pushing Chris Teskey out, the clerk. She quit. She wrote an email and said to the mayor, you brought in all these people from Chicago and New York who don't know and don't care about our election laws, and they're not even listening to me. She's the clerk. And that was fine by your mayor, you're from Green Bay. And that was fine by him and his 2 or 3 little surgeons. So ERIC has a contract with Wisconsin where they tell us we're going to keep your voter rolls true. We're going to keep your voter rolls active. And Meagan Wolfe is the chairperson of ERIC. Let me tell you how successful ERIC has been. In Wisconsin, we have about 5.5 million voters, 5.5 million citizens. We've got about 4 million eligible voters. So if you're tracking, then I ask you, if we have 4 million eligible voters in our state, how many people should we have on our voter list? 4 million or less, okay? What if I told you we had over 7 million names on our voter list? The papers don't want you to know this. Just like they never wanted, the last time I saw them do a news blackout was the issue on the John Doe investigation where they took off after walking. And the Urinal Sentinel did a blackout on it. And I'm sorry if I use that word, I don't mean I got, the day after I issued the opinion, I wrote that opinion in July of 2015, saying that even if everything that Kevin Kennedy ran the Government Accountability Board, there's a reason why I'm saying his name. Kevin Kennedy ran what was called the Government Accountability Board for 30 years. And he was as leftist partisan. And this is not just the opinion of some guy wearing a moderately priced suit. He was so leftist partisan that after the John Doe investigation and after my opinion came out, the legislature dismantled the Government Accountability Board and said, you went crazy, leftist partisan. There was a state senator there. They were intercepting her emails. They were intercepting a lot of people. One of them was about her daughter's appointment with a gynecologist. Well, Kevin Kennedy's state-run agency put that in their storage in Madison, 2 blocks from the Capitol, in a file labeled opposition research, because you see that state senator was a Republican. So ERIC, we are not allowed to know. We citizens who pay for this. No legislators are allowed to know what the George Soros founded Electronic Registration Information Center. They extract from our state the personal, private, identifiable information, including social security numbers, addresses, birthdays, telephone numbers, not only from our Wisconsin Election Commission, but also from our Department of Motor Vehicles. And then what do they do with that information? We're not allowed to know. But recently we found out that they were sharing it with another entity called SEER. This is the last acronym I'll use tonight, I promise. Center, but there's a reason I'm going to hook this up with something I just said 2 minutes ago. The Center for Election Innovation and Research, which received $69.2 million from Mark Zuckerberg, is also, as is ERIC, administered by a guy named David Becker. And who sits on the board of directors of SEER, which was in receipt of everybody's personal identification from our state? Kevin Kennedy, who hired Meagan Wolfe and trained Meagan Wolfe and put into place all these policies which Wisconsin Election Commission continues illegal policies, which they, including knowingly keeping dead people on the voter list, including knowingly keeping those who have been adjudicated incompetent on the voter list, therefore prohibited from voting, including keeping the names of people we know have moved out of their voting district on the voter rolls. That's why we have 4 million eligible voters and over 7 million on our voter rolls. This is insane. And I feel like I've been working in the twilight zone, and the papers have painted me out as if I'm the bad guy. I'm not, so it's a good thing I'm not doing it for the papers. I'm doing it for you, because never in my life before, I've never said this before, I've never said it certainly to a group, maybe to a few friends. For the first time in my life, I am beginning to wonder if America's best days aren't behind us. I don't know that, but I'll tell you what, our comfort is holding us back from taking the action that's necessary.
Yeah, true.
Our forefathers, our foremothers, they created such a beautiful paradise, it should be, of material. Look at the food we have tonight. The greatest challenge of our poor in this country is not lack of food, it's obesity. It's a beautiful world. But it's that very comfort that is keeping us from what our founders knew to be the only way to keep an honest government, which is revolution. Thomas Jefferson said that the tree of liberty must be watered by the blood of the revolution every generation. I don't think that's going to happen. And our president has gone out of his way to say, don't even think about a revolution. We've got F-14s, and you bet. Who talks like that? Getting back to what I'm supposed to. So what they did, when Zuckerberg sent all of his employees to the Milwaukee City Clerk's office, to Green Bay, to Kenosha, to Racine, to Madison, all of his employees followed David Plouffe's instructions. And money, the $350 million that paid for the $10 million for our state's 5 largest cities was administered by an outfit called, no, I lied, here's one more acronym, CTCL, Center for Tech and Civic Life, which was run by Tiana Epps Johnson, who was just concluding her fellowship at the Obama Institute. And when she took the job at CTCL, which before 2020 had an annual budget of less than $1 million a year, now they've got $350 million. She didn't have to move far because she just headquartered CTCL right out of Barack Obama's campaign headquarters in downtown Chicago. They're spitting in our faces, and they're telling us what they're doing, and they're saying, yeah, with leaders of both parties who are unwilling to challenge us, what are you going to do about it? Right. And so far, the answer has been no. Right. Get them. So CTCL gets the money, and their employees, who are paid by Zuckerberg money, they get access to information that nobody else has access to. Because you see, in his book, David Plouffe said the reason that Hillary lost the 2016 campaign is she didn't spend enough time in states like Wisconsin, swing states, but she didn't do enough to get out the African American vote. Why was the left so concerned about the African American vote? They were so concerned about it, not because they really think black people are too stupid to figure out how to cast a ballot, but they know what the research shows, which is that when African Americans vote, they tend to vote approximately 88% of the time for the Democratic candidate. So that's why Plouffe, hired by Zuckerberg to run the Wisconsin operation, is giving the instructions to the Zuckerberg employees, his fellow Zuckerberg employees, and this is what they did. They used their embedded employees in all these clerk's offices to get secret information available to nobody else about which citizens had requested an absentee ballot but had not yet returned it to the clerk's office. And then they went one more. they developed an app, which I know about, and I included it in our report. We captured it off of YouTube before they took it down. It was the developer of the app bragging about what he had done. And what he had done for CTCL, and all of this, not one word of this has been challenged as far as truthfulness goes. They took it and they identified, they put aside any person who would request an absentee ballot who was not black. And he's sitting with a map of the city of Milwaukee, bragging about his app. And he's got little black pinpoints, and on the top he has the caption, "Black voters." That's what your government money went to fund. And then what did they do with it? They sent one of their own out from the clerk's office to go to that person's house and say, "Hey, I'm from the city." They could say that because of the contract. "I'm from the city, and we see that you have an absentee ballot that you haven't returned. Do you need any help filling that out? We're here to help you." And once we get that, imagine someone knocking on your door telling you they're from the city, they're from the government. Okay, that gets everybody's attention up. They're asking about my ballot. Okay, I better go get my ballot. He or she wants to take it back. I better fill it out. They said, "We'll take it back to the clerk's office." And that's why the Zuckerberg money required that the 5 cities use these drop boxes. Because the law says that the voter must return their own absentee ballot to the clerk. And they thought it would look bad if they had the same little cast of characters coming in twice a day with 20 or 30 or 40 ballots. So they needed a place to be able to dump them. Unlike other places, Milwaukee expressly refused to put cameras over their drop boxes. That's why drop boxes are a big deal, because they facilitate fraud. And the fraud is exactly what I just described. They use secret information available to nobody else to identify high propensity Biden voters, and they use their government resources only to seek out the Biden votes. And of course I have to sit there when I have to see it. And the news reporting will say the Gableman report, which found no evidence of fraud. This is what we call the big lie. The whole thing was a fraud. It wasn't a grant. It was an employment contract where the cities became our 5 biggest cities became the employees of Mark Zuckerberg and David Plouffe. That's what it was. And that's what I said in the report, and nobody has challenged. Those candidates, however well qualified, who think they can just whistle past the graveyard on this whole. Think about this. Think about this. This is what I like. Everything I just described to you, all that access to private information, all those apps that they hired really smart computer guys to develop to identify African American voters, that's all still in place. I delivered this report on March 1st, and nobody has done a damn thing. Except now, Robin Voss's appointee to the Wisconsin Election Commission wants another $1.3 million to hire 10 more people at Glenn. Call me suspicious. I don't think those people are going to help. I think what it's just going to be is another more taxpayer-funded people to tell us WEC is doing everything right. Citizens, stop asking questions, stop being an election denier, and move along. And our comfort, we're comforted. And so we take it. And so, I know I'm supposed to be hopeful. The only thing I can say, the only hopeful thing I can say is to demand, if we have an elected representative, even on the Republican side, who's standing in the way of reforming WEC, of abolishing WEC, which is what I recommend, for heaven's sake, get rid of them. He does not have a God-given right to that job. He's been there 28 years. You can't do what you wanted to do in 28 years. Then you should get the hell out and let somebody else do the job.